When I first drove this latest Nissan Armada late last year, I came away impressed. No longer does this feel like a discount alternative to the one other Japanese option in the class. It's a competitor, so why not put it against the standard of the full-size SUV segment?
And that's the Chevrolet Tahoe with its nice little textured badge. But Kyle, why don't we have a high country instead of just this Z71, since we have the fully loaded Platinum Reserve Armada?
Well, Mike, that's because these two are within just a few $100s of each other. So we're here to figure out if all of this is worth the same price as that.
As we mentioned at the beginning, pricing between these two vehicles as tested is very close, less than $1,000. This Armada is fully loaded, pretty much every option is checked, and it's $84,900 in the US with destination charges. The Chevy Tahoe Z71, well, it's just over $84,000. So it really isn't apples to apples when it comes to price, but when it comes to equipment, well, if you wanted to get a Pro 4X Armada, or if you want to get a fully loaded high country Tahoe, well, Nissan will have a huge price advantage. The new Armada ditches the V8, which seems to be the trend in this class. In fact, the Tahoe is the only one that still has one available. So in here is a 3.5 liter twin turbocharged V6. Nissan will be quick to point out that it's from the same family as the GTR, although it's not really that related. Still, it makes 425 horsepower and 516 pound-feet of torque. So that's a little bit more horsepower than the Chevy and a lot more torque. And although in a straight line they're both plenty quick, you can feel it around town. Being a turbo, there's a lot more torque available low down, and this engine just seems to operate at lower RPMs with less noise, which isn't a bad thing for the Chevy. I mean, I love that V8 sound, but you just feel a little more refinement here. Refined as it may be, this is still a true truck-based SUV. In fact, SUV, that term is used for pretty much any high-riding vehicle. Maybe we should make a new one, the TUV, the truck utility vehicle, because that's what this is. It has a 9-speed automatic that's attached to a proper 2-speed transfer case. Now with the two 75mm wide tires, with the small sidewalls on 22-inch wheels, you're probably not taking this off-road, but there are other trims with more sidewall and meatier tires that would take full advantage of that 2-speed transfer case. Fuel economy, well, in something this big, it's pretty much what you'd expect. Not good. 16 miles per gallon in the city and only 19 on the highway. But Nissan does recommend using premium fuel to get the full power and have the engine optimally operate. So that's a bit of a hit, especially with something that's using this much gas. But hey, that's not why you buy these. You don't buy these to be efficient. You buy them to do truck things, and the Armada can tow up to 8,500 pounds when properly equipped. And even in this more carb-based version, there's still 9.6 inches of ground clearance on the air suspensions all the way up in its off-road mode. That's a little bit less than the Tahoe, which can hit 10 inches, but it's very close. But as I've stated a few times now, this is going to spend most of its life, if not all of its life, on pavement. Even though it has fairly wide tires that I mentioned earlier and the low profile and all that, this isn't exactly a sporty or performance vehicle. Handling, probably the best word to use is ponderous. When entering a corner with a little bit too much speed, it doesn't feel like it's going to tip over, but you can feel all that weight shift into the front outside wheel, and it's just better to take corners a little more relaxed. There isn't any side bolstering really in these seats, so everyone in all 3 rows will start to shift, and yeah, this is meant for more relaxed driving. It's the same story with the braking. It takes a little while to get used to how much pressure is needed to slow this rig down. And I'm not talking when it's full of people. I actually didn't find much difference having 6 people on board compared to 1. The brake's a bit squishy, and we found the same sort of feel in the Tahoe, sort of like a class thing, because you could have such varied amounts of weight or towing. Both vehicles have trailer brake controller standard, so that's a big plus. The steering in here also is a bit stiffer, and it's just sort of the best way to describe this overall. Kyle and I find that this vehicle is just stiffer in its controls, and just you can feel the weight more, even though it and the Tahoe are very close curb weights. The suspension too, when in comfort mode, it's comfortable enough and it absorbs bumps pretty well, But you get behind the wheel of the Tahoe and you realize how much softer that is. Now that could be due to the all-terrain tires, but it's not all that. This just feels that maybe in the name of refinement, it ended up being a little stiffer. Could be to help control suspension creaks and clumps, which it does a really good job. It's much quieter in here when it comes to those sort of things. The driving experience really is worthy of the Platinum Reserve name. Now the QX80 that we drove that's based on the same platform a couple months ago, it obviously has a more refined drive all around, but it's also a lot more money. From behind the wheel, the view's great because these are basically giant boxes, so sightlines are good and you sit so high. I mean, these are based originally on full-size pickup trucks and you're basically seeing eye to eye with those and looking over all sorts of other crossovers and SUVs like a Lexus RX or a Honda CR-V. You're just in this big, high commanding seat. A lot of large vehicles do a good job hiding their size and weight from behind the wheel when driving them. This is not one of them. It drives just as big as it is.
All right, so if you are looking for a V8 powertrain in your full-size body-on-frame SUV, the GM choices are the only ones left in the segment. I mean, you know, that also includes the Escalade if you want something fancy. But still, here in the Tahoe, the 5.3-liter V8 is standard. This one has the optional 6.2. That gives us 420 horsepower and 460 pound-feet of torque, which actually makes this weaker than the Nissan in both cases. It's 5 horsepower. You're not really going to notice that difference in terms of the difference between these two, but the torque is actually a substantial difference. The Nissan has over 500. Overall, though, to daily drive these things, it's a pretty similar experience. This doesn't have quite the same shove immediately off idle, but it's a V8. It's so predictable. And the 10-speed automatic that GM uses is a good one. It's the same one that we know in Ford products, but as we've said a few times on the channel over the years, the Fords just aren't as well judged. This is a super smooth transmission. I never have any issues waiting for it to kick down. It shifts exactly when I need to. Overall, a very predictable powertrain. However, my hot take is this is actually the wrong engine for this vehicle. GM will still sell you the 3-liter turbo diesel in these full-size SUVs, and that is the choice to have as far as I'm concerned, because you can get ridiculous fuel economy out of it. Yes, diesel is maybe a little more expensive every once in a while, but we're talking twice as good a fuel economy, so you're making up for that over the course of the vehicle's life. The Chevy's big V8 doesn't give it a fuel economy advantage either. Now, I'm not going to pretend that's a primary deciding factor when you're buying something this size, but still, saving at the pumps is nice no matter what car you're buying, or SUV. And in this case, well, it's just a little bit behind the Nissan. With the 6.2, you are getting 14 miles per gallon in the city and 18 on the highway for an average of, well, 16 miles per gallon.
So from a styling perspective, well, it's always one of those beauties in the eye of the beholder, and that's obviously the case. But if you really look at them though, yeah, maybe the Tahoe is a little bit longer visually, but because the Suburban exists, maybe our mind's playing tricks on us that it doesn't look as long as the numbers say. And this doesn't look that much taller. The hood line, in fact, seems like it might be a fraction lower than that in the Tahoe. Up front, the Armada has a very squared off face. It's a bit different than Nissan's other SUVs. It's got more of the Titan look to it, which makes sense due to the family resemblance. It's imposing with the huge outline daytime running LEDs around the headlight structure. It's just a very traditional full-size SUV from the front. So like the Armada, the Tahoe too shares a face that's very similar to the full-size truck it's based on, but I'd say even more so. There's so much more resemblance between the Silverado and the Tahoe that from the front it almost looks like a pickup with a body just attached to it. From the rear, it is more SUV, and having the 6.2-liter V8 upgrade, it has the quad-tip exhaust, which I'm a big sucker for, whereas the Nissan's is hidden and it's just one giant one under the bumper on the right-hand side. It's kind of hard to compare them head-to-head because this is the refined, elegant look, whereas the Chevy's the off-road look, and both vehicles have both of those options as well. So there is the Pro 4X that has all the off-road goodies, and then with the Chevy you get the High Country that has all the fancy bits. But both manufacturers do fall into styling tropes. With the Armada, it's that single light bar across the entire tailgate that pretty much everyone's doing these days. And with the Chevy, well, the Tahoe has those split headlights with the LED running light closer to the hood and then the actual headlight positioned separately lower down. From the side, like its sibling, the Infiniti QX80, the Armada steals some Range Rover design cues, like the vent in the front fender and the way Armada is placed just behind the rear side window.
The Tahoe interior is pretty solid. It's not going to bring any surprises, but it's also not going to be difficult to get used to if this is your first time in a Tahoe. It's restrained, there's not an overabundance of chrome, there's a large swath of not entirely unconvincing wood across the dashboard. It's just that it's kind of plain. It's a lot of soft touch black plastic. Now, while the Nissan's interior does feel more special, and I do really like the subtle two-tone nature of its color scheme, I wish that either of these had just a little more color to them. The center consoles are a little different. I appreciate that I have more throw it, deal with it later space in the Tahoe. The Armada has a really good wireless charger setup. So does this. It sits sideways. Not a big difference. Both of them are grippy and keep the phone in contact so you are charging the whole time, so that's a win. But other than that, well, I guess this has these little plastic bumps to hold drinks in place of different sizes, whereas the Nissan has tabs, which I find just a little more consistent. Minor things. One thing I have to actually give credit to, not just the Chevy, but both vehicles, is the welcome amount of physical controls. Now in the Tahoe, that takes the shape of some controls down here for your climate. I have rotary dials that are rubber coated, so it's just easy to use even with gloves on. And if you want to go into more detail in the climate system, then you're going to have to go into the touchscreen, and that's not great, but hey, look, for most functions, you'll be able to use this. And the Chevy only really uses piano black there and around here for the cup holders. It's not like the Nissan that has this huge amount of piano black, which we just really don't like. Also in the Nissan, because you're using a touch button shifter, you're always touching the piano black, so it will be clean the day you get the vehicle and then no other times. The Chevy system is a 17.7-inch screen, so it is the larger screen, and it is pretty darn sharp. I really like Chevy's latest infotainment system because it is so customizable, at least the central section. So if you want to drag any favorites up to the top menu, you can, and that menu is always visible even if you're using wireless CarPlay. So there's not a lot of fiddling to get from your phone menus to your native menu, which I really like. Also, this isn't one of the EVs, so I still have wireless CarPlay. Yay! I don't necessarily love the driver instrument cluster though. While it is very sharp and there are a bunch of layouts, preset layouts, that's the thing. You don't have a lot of customization from within each layout. If you want, say, your trip meter, well, you're gonna have to dig through here to find it, and that just feels like a bit of a miss. The head-up display works well enough, it's very sharp, even though Chevy does warn not to use polarized glasses, or to avoid them, in the main menu. I find its head-up displays are some of the best when you are using polarized glasses, so food for thought. The Chevy's audio system is only okay. It's at Bose setup, so it's bassy, but I just find playing the same song between two vehicles, especially a live song, everything just gets muddled in the Chevy, whereas it is crisp and clean in the Nissan. That Klipsch setup only has 2 more speakers and it's only 600 watts, but it is one of the best mainstream audio systems I've experienced in a while now. Now, I'm no audiophile, so I can't go in depth about why that is. I'm just telling you, music sounds incredible on it, even when you do crank up the volume. The Nissan's digital setup is also really good, now that we are in a new generation, the Armada has, on this higher trim, a twin 14.3-inch screen setup. So it's actually overall about the same size as the Chevys when you take both into account. And because they are sitting beside each other, you do get some handy features. If you were using one of the different available 360-degree camera views, since there are multiple, if you want, it will actually spread across both screens just to give you a really clear idea of exactly where the extremities of the vehicle are. And I mean, that's useful because the Armada is enormous. When we're talking camera views though, the Chevy counters with a really excellent trailering suite. You have so many different views. You have a trailer hitch assist. When you punch in your trailer information and store it in the system, the driver assists adapt for that. So that is just this sort of peace of mind that makes the Chevy, well, such a standard of the class. If you are towing regularly, which is probably one of the main reasons you're buying something like this, well, that's a huge selling feature. You also have the peek around feature, which gives you a generated view of the car. It is something worth using if you are in a tight spot with a blind exit, let's say a tight parking lot. The thing with that one is there is some skewing with the view, so I wouldn't use that if you're thinking inch perfect accuracy. The Armada's interior just feels more special. Now, yeah, it is a higher trim, but again, like we said, these are basically the same price, so that is what you're getting for similar amounts of money. The seats are just nicer leather, and they're quilted. They're also just more comfortable. I find the Tahoes good, and surprisingly good for long distances, considering how flat and unshapely they look. But the Nissans are better. You also get seat ventilation, which is a nice touch.
An important part of these big SUVs is passenger comfort. That's why they're so big. They're going to carry a lot of people. So we'll start with the second row. These seats are very comfortable with their quilted leather. They're pretty much the same as the front seats minus the power adjustability. It's fully manual back here, which I'm a little surprised as being the fully loaded model. I do have cup holders that are really close and easy to get to. I have my 2-zone rear climate control. There's USB-C plugs everywhere. Yeah, headroom's good, legroom's good. I mean, it's what you'd expect. Full-size adult fits here, no problem.
Yeah, it looks good. It's pretty decent back here in terms of space. These headrests are really low, so you're gonna have to extend them fully if you're an adult. And I have to sit a little slouched to not bump my head on the roof. But it's pretty comfortable. I have a good amount of leg room. The cushion's a little low, but whatever. And then I have chargers on both sides and 4 cup holders. But the one thing that I want to point out, because this was the case in the Infiniti as well, in the Armada, there are third row seat folding controls, and there is no safety. Nothing. It'll just keep going until it squishes me. And this is the end.
Your body physically stops it.
Yep. That's it.
Nice. All right. Well, let's go to the Chevy. Well, I'll go to the Chevy. Maybe I'll let you out. We'll see.
I don't know.
Okay, we are now in the Tahoe, and I gotta say, comfort's still pretty good. In the second row, I actually find the seats a little higher, so it's a little better for me, specifically, and how I sit. The seat itself isn't as squishy comfortable. It doesn't have the same quality leather, which is sort of what you'd expect because it is the fully loaded. My cup holders are here, and I can reach them, but smaller passengers might not be able to reach their cup holders. Again, I have the climate control back here. Headroom's good, legroom's good. It's another big SUV with plenty of space in the second row.
And the third row is kind of the similar story, where I do have more room in total. I'm sitting straight up and I am fine. But boy, does it feel dark back here because you have this enormous pillar. You have vents that are just in front of you now, so I feel like I probably would get better air as opposed to the Armada, where it's just blasting me in the face. USB ports, which are nice. The seat cushion is pretty similar to the one in the Armada. And the cup holders, I only get 2 back here, and the one is tiny. I will say that in terms of accessing the third row too, there is a slight difference with these, whereas these seats, the bottoms will actually unhinge, and you can fold the whole seat forward, so you get a bit more of an entry space. But the Armadas stay upright, so if you have a car seat installed, you can actually leave it installed, which is handy. I'm not entirely sure which one is worse in terms of its rails, because this one has exposed rails and you're gonna get gunk in there, and that one has plastic covers that say, please don't step on me. So, you know.
Yeah, and important thing you said about having more room is this isn't stadium seating from the second to third row. It's pretty much a flat floor between the two, whereas there it's a definite step up to get in the third row. I feel like there's more space between these seats, but that may just be because there's no cup holder. That is the wider vehicle, so it's probably just an illusion. But yeah, neither are terrible. I mean, you'd expect that in vehicles this big and in this class.
Yeah, I could do a road trip back here. So after driving both of these vehicles, we both agree that while they're pretty similar, it's this that's the easier thing to drive, the Tahoe, although we'd both rather be in the Armada.
And part of the reason that's easier to drive could be the Z71 package, and there is an Armada Pro 4X, which is a lot less money than that. Or if you want the nicer experience in the Tahoe, there's the High Country, but again, it's a lot more money than the equivalent Armada.
Which actually brings us right back to the beginning of this video, which is that this might not be necessarily as affordable as it once was, but out of these two, the Armada is the value play and the one that we'd pick here.